I have never liked this fight. They traded on your currency, which is one of my issues with this fight. The achievements of bona fide, legendary fighters that won world titles.
It's very harsh.
It is.
But you're absolutely right.
Blimey, Chris.
There were so many people who had this view that I shouldn't be taking up as much limelight, as they put it, and I was made to leave the camp.
He's learnt all his lessons. He's out there doing it without you on his shoulder.
Yeah.
Just a thought process.
Let's listen to this.
I'm just saying. You know? I'm just putting it out there. People make their own view on it.
What is a father supposed to do? And when you speak of him so highly in terms of how he engages the public and how he winds people up, excuse me.
The apple hasn't fallen far from the tree. Do you think your son can be a world champion?
I don't know.
You don't know?
I really don't know.
Your judgment of what your son has achieved is valuable to one person and one person only, you and perhaps your son.
Why are you telling me something that is obvious? There are those who are saying, please take the money, get back in there so we can strip you of your health. He's not fighting Conor Benn, he's fighting the promoter. If you use bad language again, I will leave this interview.
All right, okay.
Okay, I am not with that level.
Welcome to episode 146 of Talk Boxing with Simon Jordan, Spencer Oliver and Paul Smith. And joining us today is the inimitable Chris Eubank Sr. Chris, thank you for joining us. Nice to see you. Before we get into the broad brush and the weeds of the fight coming up this weekend, I wanted to get it out there early about the verdict on this fight and who we thought was going to win before we discuss it with Chris. Between you and Paul, where are you going with this fight?
Where I went last time. I think that Chris Eubank Jr. wins the fight. I think he wins it more comfortably this time. I think that he missed a weight last time. That has a massive effect on the outcome of your performance. I know that better than no one. Making weight is a difficult thing, and he got it wrong. I think that Jonathan Banks is a great trainer. That's who he was previously with. But Womack is a brilliant trainer. I think that he comes up with excellent game plans. I think he's been working Chris like a dog, you know, and I think that will have an effect on the outcome of this fight. I think that Chris wins it and he wins it more comfortable.
I think you're different, Paul, aren't you? I think I spoke to Liam the other day, and he picked Conor. I think you're on the Conor Benn side of the argument, aren't you?
Yeah, thanks very much for this, Simon. Really appreciate it. I picked him last time to win Eubank, and I thought he'd win comfortably. And because of the last fight and the performance in the last fight and how it wasn't close, it wasn't a close fight. Chris won well, but because of the success that Conor had, which I didn't think he'd have, because of the reactions that he got, that I didn't think he'd get in the last fight, that's made me think this one's a lot closer. So I'm going to go to set up the trilogy and pick Conor Benn.
Mr. Eubank, I have never liked this fight for whatever my opinion is worth, and I'm sure you'll tell me what my opinion is worth in a minute. But why is your son putting himself through this experience again?
Money.
Nothing more than that? I mean, we heard a lot of noise, didn't we, about holding up the legacy, the Eubank and the Benn names.
Talking about legacy.
Heritage. Your achievements.
But it's, you know, I don't speak about my achievements. I speak about righteousness. Speak about what is correct, what is decent,
but the narrative
what is
around
truth.
This fight is the backdrop is if it was Fred Bloggs and Norman Nomark, it would be no interest, because your name's above the door and because Nigel's name's above the door, it can't help but be drawn into that situation where people talk about, because I made an observation about the performance of the two fighters, and you'll disagree with me and tell me I have no right to say this. I think it's the least they could have done was put out the performances they put in the first fight, because they're representing something more than just a big bag of money. They traded on your currency, which is one of my issues with this fight. The achievements of bona fide, legendary fighters that won world titles is the currency that's been traded on by the two sons. And so the least they could do was put out a performance at the level that they put out and leave it all in the ring. And am I wrong in saying that?
It's very harsh.
It is.
But you're absolutely right.
Blimey, Chris.
What do you mean, blimey? Common sense is common sense.
Well, I think so. You made a lot of noise prior to the fight, Chris, about the fight itself, your objection to it, the objectification of your son, the fighting weight class. But you were there, and you came. And, you know, we've discussed it on another show. We don't need to talk about the mechanics of why you came and what you came for. But what is your involvement likely to be this time round? Are you going to be closer to the camp, closer. We've had Bomac in here talking about Brian McIntyre, the trainer, talking about your son, talking about post this fight when he wins this fight, and ultimately he's going to fight for a world title and where that's going to be, at 160, which I'm sure you don't agree. Are you going to be any more involved in the centre of your son's world coming up to this fight, or is it just going to be another media narrative of nostalgia? In comes Eubank Sr. alongside Eubank Jr. In comes Ben with his dad.
What is the question?
Are you going to be more involved in what's going on with your son?
No.
Would you like to have been?
With the experience that I've had, possibly less said, easier to mend. Yes.
Why wouldn't you want to be involved with Chris at this stage, with what's on the line, with with the history of you and Nigel, with the sons now doing it as well? Why wouldn't you want that involvement, Chris?
For many years, there were so many people who would say, he should let his son,
Make his own decisions.
I wasn't going to say that.
All right.
There were so many people who had this view that I shouldn't be taking up as much limelight, as they put it, as I did. And so this went on for years, and obviously Junior, over a period of time, he buckled to that, and I was made to leave the camp.
And that had an effect on your relationship.
Do you not think there's some merit in that argument, though, Chris, just out of curiosity, before we move on? Do you not think that he's a man of his own right, he's a man of his own deeds, and being your son was difficult enough because of the achievements that you had, that he should be able to come out into the light and be his own man and not be your son?
It's corrupt. Always stay in the... Always stay... this is not just for boxing. Mm-hmm. This is for every man who is watching this broadcast. Always stay in the shadow of your father. Always. You're never going to be as good as your father, especially if you supersede him in whatever regard. Money, competition, especially if you exceed what he has done. Always stay in his shadow. This way, the world that you can't see will always credit you. My father worked in 4 Dagenhams for I don't know how many years, 90 pounds a week, bringing up 4 children, okay? He walked with a limp, okay? He was 5'3". I would never put myself in the same.
But respecting your father.
Just hold on,
Chris,
hold on. I would never say, well, okay, I was better than my father.
That's not what he's saying,
Hold
Chris, is it?
on.
That's your ego talking.
Hold on. No, it's not my ego talking.
How do you accord your thinking? How do you accord your thinking with wanting the son to be better?
I'll be able to actually explain.
Well, go on then.
All right, okay. When I say stay in the shadow of your father, you didn't have to walk in your father's shoes. You don't know what he had to go through to get you and bring you up in this world. That's why you always bow, you always are obedient to your father. This is not just boxing, this is every field. One of the oldest statutes, honor your father and your mother so that your days on earth may be long. These are statutes that are global.
And inscribed in time. I understand your point. But what you're suggesting also, and we'll move on to the actual fight itself, I just want to dwell on this for 30 seconds. How does that chime with the idea that every parent wants his son to do better and to have a better life than he had? How does that chime with that mentality? Because I want my son to be better and have a better life than I had, and my father wanted me to have a better life than he did. And so with that in mind, if I emulate my father's deeds, it doesn't mean my father's value's been lost. It means I'm a man in my own right. And what you sought to do, to some extent, is to control the narrative and all the attention around what was happening with your son.
Okay, so that to me sounds like, jealousy. What I'm doing for my son is actually, I'm schooling him in the art and the craft of gladiating. I held his hand right the way through. Okay, I was protecting him all the way through. To what? for him to come back and say all of a sudden, oh, all these guys, even this guy here behind me, and him over there, and him over there, these promoters, they are whatever term he labeled them with. So what he did, he came around to actually then learn that, oh, Dad was absolutely right. And what I was doing was protecting him. Protecting him. Let me tell you the type of dad. You're looking at, you're looking at a very spiritual man. I was a fantastic daddy. Mm-hmm. I was a fantastic daddy. I'm going to give you a tip. I'm going to tell you, I'm going to show you how, you said to me earlier, okay, I am a journalist. Okay, so now you're a journalist. I'm going to give you I'll give you a tip.
Go ahead.
Okay? And this stems from being a superior, fantastic, a daddy, a sugar daddy beyond measure. Okay.
Sugar daddy.
Listen. Okay. So, as a journalist,
you love that.
If I was born at 8 minutes past 8 on the morning of Monday, 1966, on August, the 8th month, right? The 8th month of the 8th day. So the 8th month, the 8th day, 8 minutes past 8 on a Monday, money. I do this because there's a sign on my palm. I am money. But anyway, rather than talk about that because that'll take you off track. As a journalist, if you go to, now this is going to be bold, but I'm going to say it. If you go to Xi Jinping and you do the research on the numbers I've just given you, mm-hmm. You'll become a very, very, very famous man if you can find out what I'm talking about.
Okay, I'll look into it.
So the point I'm making to you is this: when you find out what type of the things I've done. I'm going to tell you this. And hold on.
I want to move on to the fight, Chris.
This is a great.
Well, be quick then.
This is a great point.
Be quick.
Okay, I want to tell you one day, I did a deal with a fellow in the United States of America, Al Heyman. Okay, I negotiated a deal for Junior to fight for $1.4 million. The fighter was neither here nor there, whoever he was fighting. He came back to me. So we went, my wife and I, we went to Houston. We met him in the hotel. We sat down, we talked, and he said, look, that's too much money. I'm going to have to actually draw it back. We're going to have to negotiate something else. He said this to me. You know what I did? I burst into tears. The reason I burst into tears is because I gave my son my word. That's the daddy I am. Now, I want you to check that story, if you can, with Al Heyman.
If you say it's true, why would I tell you anything different?
Okay, no, just...
I'll take you at face value.
And so you should. That's the daddy I am.
Okay.
And so the...
You've made your point, Chris. We're going to move on to the fight. Let's get into the first fight, Spence, and have a look about Eubank's approach. Not have a look at his approach, but I want you to talk to me about what you thought of his approach to the first fight was.
Well, listen, I think that Chris started the fight very well. He executed the game plan very well. He worked behind the jab and he was keeping Conor at range. That's where Conor was struggling to get inside, to get the work, because that's where he needed to be. He needed to be in close. But Chris was doing well with them shots, keeping it long. But as the fight wore on, Conor was getting close and Chris was, you could see him starting to slow down a little bit. And I think when we got into the later rounds, the penultimate rounds, that's when Conor started to ask Chris questions about himself, and Chris actually, he answered those questions, because at the end of round 9, I saw him walking back to the corner, his head was down, and you knew he was at that stage of a fight where you go, this guy has now got to show character, because he was severely dehydrated. We could see that as the fight was wearing on. The strength was leaving his body. Conor was coming into it in the middle rounds, and then Chris, from somewhere, he is his father's son, because he bit down on his gum shield and he found something from somewhere that only Chris knows how he got that. Because it was at a time where you could see the physicalities were leaving him. It was becoming a psychological battle, and he bit down and he turned around and he done what champions do, and he won the contest. And he won the contest, dare I say it, Chris Eubank Jr. probably being the worst version of himself because of the weight making going into that fight.
I mean, am I right, Chris, that you didn't like the way that your son approached the second half of the fight? Am I right in that assessment?
Yeah, I mean, I said this is legendary behaviour to actually go and stand toe-to-toe, to sit in the pocket.
Yeah.
With a man who's 28 years old and you're 36. I know what 36 is. I retired at 32. I know what 36 is. And to be fighting an energy like Nigel Benn's son.
But Chris, he was fighting on spirit there. That was what it was.
That's
because,
right.
like I say, like the physicalities had left Chris. You could see that he was tired, he was drained.
That's right.
But he found it from here, and that is the difference. Every fighter has a different pain threshold, and Chris took it to a deep, dark place there for sure.
Question. How many times do you think you can go back to that particular way?
That's the $1 million question.
Well, it's not to me. I know.
That's the simple and only reason why I'm saying I'm going to side with Conor in this fight. Now, I've been in the ring with Chris. I've sparred him while you were there. You were in the same gym. The advice you were giving him all the time was about his boxing and his jab. And I was happy when he was jabbing because he is better, in my opinion, up close and personal. But he likes to fight and he can fight and he certainly can. But with regards to heart and desire and determination and not giving a knock, that's never going to be in Chris Jr. I'm not just saying it because you're here, he's got it in him. You are down bags as a fighter.
But Paul,
that's what made you stand out as a fighter, your toughness, you're willing to win. I've watched Chris when he was gone, when my brother Liam caught him. The referee had stopped the fight and he's still trying to go at him. And he's still trying to fight on and he's still trying to... You can see it yourself on the video if you watch it back. You know, the desire or the toughness or the chin or was always never in question with Junior. But he got caught with a couple of shots, and that was my only issue in this fight, and that's what my issue is going into this fight. I didn't think the fight was close, and I didn't think it should have been close, but it was a little bit closer than I thought, because I thought it was going to be completely one-sided for Chris, who was the bigger, stronger, better
But let's
man.
say he gets the weight right this time, and he's 20% better than the version we saw in the last fight. Would you?
Can I ask you, Chris? I'm not sure whether you know, but I am of the opinion I think he did get the weight right. I think he just missed the timing up. Because the rehydration weight limit the next day tells me that he was okay, because he was only 8 pounds over the next day and he could have been up to 10. Now, if you get it wrong, usually you put a lot more on than 8 pounds the next day. That's just, again, just my opinion. That's why I'm asking you, and I might be wrong, but it's obviously the question.
I don't want to get into these rehydration clauses. These are, do you know what the word snare?
Yeah.
Okay, he's in a trap. This is the trap. Yeah. Okay, so, to talk, let me not speak. Now you will have to see. And once you do see, Mr. Jordan, I want you to spit fire at these authorities. And if you don't...
We'll talk about that later. We'll talk about that later on the show.
No, we don't have to talk about it later. I want to say this. Then you would have earned your position to sit in the seat that you're in now, to be a commentator on this, the great game.
Fair enough. After the first fight, you said to talkSPORT, the credit I'm going to give to Conor. I told you he was a superior fighter. Why would you say that after your son had just won the fight? What was the purpose of that observation?
I've always been pro
Conor.
Conor. I've always.
Is he superior to your son, though? Is that what you were saying?
No. Obviously not. If anything, it actually elevates my son. If this man who has lost is a superior fighter, my son is above that because he's beaten him. I'm saying to you, what I was doing was being graceful about the performance about the performance of which he exemplified. To fight a man who all the commentators, all the former fighters, Chris, the bigger man, the bigger man, the bigger man, the bigger man. That should not be allowed, because it's against the rules for someone to be a bigger man.
Yeah.
Middleweight fights middleweight, light heavyweight, light heavy, welterweight, welterweight. When there is a change of that, and you're going, so you have one guy who's 20 pounds lighter fighting a guy who's...
So you didn't mean, and we're going to pick the bones out of that particular observation later on in the show, right? Because I know you want to talk about it, and you've got some very valid points to make about it. But to describe Conor as a superior fighter, was it superior fighter to the narrative?
Not to Junior.
Sorry, it wasn't
Junior
about,
won.
It was about the narrative that people were painting of him, which is he wasn't at a level. You're saying he was superior to some of the going on in the background that people were saying Conor Benn's not at this level. Is that the point you were making?
If you use bad language again, I will leave this interview.
All right, okay.
Okay, I am not with that level.
Fair enough. All of the nonsense and the misrepresentations that people were saying about Conor Benn's skill level, that was the point you were making by saying he was a superior fighter. It was simply against the backdrop of misrepresented observations about his ability.
Yes.
Right, fair enough.
And he proved it.
Right.
Beautifully.
Do you think so? He certainly proved he was game. What changes, Paul, do you think Chris is going to make tactically, knowing now what he knows about Conor? He himself has turned around and said that he didn't think Conor had in him what he had in him. So what do you expect the adjustments to be from Chris going into this second fight?
Me, I would do a lot more of what he did well early and get the jab going more, box a little bit more. I think now that he knows that Conor can have a little bit of an effect on him, then you don't need to stand and trade too much when you're the superior boxer. And I think, as we said last time, I felt Chris would have controlled the fight a lot easier than he did. And that's not putting Chris down, it's probably praising Conor Benn. As you said, it was a great effort. He surprised me on the night, Conor Benn, with how much he dug in and how well he did, given the weight deficit, given the weight advantage and the difference between the both fighters. And listen, the experience level between both fighters. Chris Eubank's been in with top fighters constantly. Conor Benn hasn't anywhere near as many as Chris Eubank, and he hasn't had as many 12-round fights and as many big fights on the big stage as Chris Eubank Jr. So I felt all that came into play on the night, and therefore I left the venue thinking that was a great night. It ticked the nostalgia box, it ticked the good fight, main event fight box for me, and it was a great fight to watch. And I think the second one will be the same, but I think Chris needs to box a little bit more and not engage a little bit too much early on, but he doesn't have to. He can make it a bit comfortable for himself early on.
Going to the intangibles, we have seen, and this is where I've really warmed to his son and become much more flexible in my thinking about his son, whether he likes it or not, is his masterclasses in press conferences, his ability to be able to curate the outcomes that he wants and control the temperature of the conversation, and his boldness, whether it's crass, some of the things he says, some of the language he uses at times, or it's actually on the money. What do you expect to see? Do you expect Chris to control the conversations in the press conferences and the temperature of the room again? Well,
we're going to see a little bit of that again later on, and I think that's Chris's game. You know, I think that the mind games start from now, and that had an effect on Conor Benn. Like I say, the emotions took over in the performance, and that was because of the lead up, the build up, you know, in the press conferences where Chris completely controlled it. You know, he's a genius at that. You know, and I think everyone's accepted that, and that's why Conor now is playing it back. Yesterday, when we were at the media day, Conor was playing it back. He was very reserved and conducted himself very well, to be fair. You know, but Chris Eubank Jr. recognises it. He just waits to see, you know, where it's going, and then he'll pounce. You know, he'll throw the narrative out. He's done it already with the ambulances, and then maybe something else that he's got up his sleeve. But you've got to accept that Chris will always control the press conferences. That's it. That's his game.
Chris, what do you think of your son's? I mean, it's part of the game. In the end of the day, it's not won and lost in those environments, but notwithstanding it, it creates a temperature, it creates a tone, it perhaps gets into people's psyche. When you watch your son perform in a press conference, what do you think watching him as your son? I mean, we've heard things being said. We saw the egg slap, which I know you didn't like, and you said, I didn't raise my son to be that way, right? And we heard things like Conor Benn coming back saying, well, you've got a masterclass, you've managed to master the situation of your own father not even liking you. So we hear these sort of comments that go back and forward. When you listen to Chris in a press conference, what goes through your head if you listen to him? If you do listen to him, I'm assuming you do.
I have to put it this way, that so 2011, 2012, he turned pro, and you saw me with him right the way through up until, let's say, 2016. So effectively, in taking him to school, and I'm talking about the school of boxing, the school of hard knocks, in taking him to school, it seems as though I've done a tremendous job. A tremendous job, right?
Well, you was the genius at controlling those press conferences yourself, and you were very good at that, Chris. And he is like a chip off the old block.
He's saying that.
That's exactly what I'm saying. I brought him to... I was speaking for him. All he was doing was stone cold. And I was there giving it the poetry.
So are you impressed that he's learnt his lessons? The apple hasn't fallen far from the tree?
I can only go by the words of which you speak.
He's bold. Look at the things he says.
When you say and when you speak of him so highly in terms of how he engages the public and how he winds people up. Excuse me.
Yeah, well done. Yeah.
Would you agree that he's changed recently and that he's endeared to a lot more fans and he's won a lot more people like me over, and you're watching him with a smile on your face now, and you know yourself when you used to fight. I went to watch you with my dad in the G-Mex when you fought Mauro Galvano, and it was one of my first ever pro fights I went to. But people were there to watch you, and maybe a quarter or half were there to see you lose, and a quarter to half were there to see you win. And you were loved to be hated and loved to be loved as well. And as he's got a bit older, do you think he's changed a little bit in his persona, whereas he's a lot more likeable now?
Again, you know, this class or school I took him through, he's now going through the entire spectrum. So that spectrum is, okay, you've gone from being maybe disliked to being liked to being loved. The key is to get the hearts of the people. That is the key. It isn't the money. With the hearts of the people, you can get the type of wealth that I have, which is something that I cannot speak on because it may shock you.
Okay, fantastic. Has he graduated this school with honours then?
I'm only
to be seen. To be seen.
No, you've already given him his flowers.
Maybe because he's unable to breathe and he hasn't got you there now, that he's actually doing something different. He's learnt all his lessons and he's out there doing it without you on his shoulder.
Yeah.
Just a thought process.
Listen to
I'm just saying. You know? I'm just putting it out there. People make their own view on it.
Yeah, but you're saying that you're a bigot. You're telling people that you're a bigot.
There's nothing bigoted about that. Don't be so bloody silly.
Yeah.
Do better than that.
What?
Nothing bigoted about it.
What is a father supposed to do? Am I supposed to just take him and
let his son develop and shine?
That's what he's doing.
To the surface.
That's what he's doing. But
well, let's not rehash the argument we just had.
Hold on.
I've opened a can of worms again.
Because
back down the cul-de-sac.
No, it's not. It's not. What I'm trying to point out to you is that, you know, when you're loved by somebody, I love my son.
Indeed, you do.
Okay, so that love, I'm protecting him and I'm steering him in the right direction right the way through. Now, to some people on the outside, like you, like what you just said, you know, when are you going to get away from him? No, don't teach people that.
You've got it.
Keep the father next to the child.
We disagree. We can agree to disagree, can't we? We can disagree.
Do you have children?
Yes, I do, and that's why I can speak as a father. And I don't agree with you. So we all agree to disagree, right? But
there was a movie. Sorry, I'm just talking now.
Go on.
Okay, there's a movie about the Williams sisters. And
yes, about their
father,
yeah.
Richard.
I saw it, yeah,
okay,
Richard.
Well, okay, King Richard. Look at that. Look. If you watch that movie, you will see I'm being exactly as he was. You can't be. A child cannot be successful if you leave the child to do it by themselves.
We've got a new prize up for grabs you could win, and it's a knockout. Be in with a chance to win 2 tickets to the highly anticipated Chris Eubank versus Conor Benn rematch at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium on November the 15th, plus a luxurious one-night stay at a 5-star hotel in London. And we're throwing in £5,000 to make it an unforgettable weekend. Head to talksport.com/win for entry and competition rules. 18 plus UK excluding Northern Ireland.
One of the things that we did see change about your son was who was in his corner for the fight. And we had Brian Bomac on the show about 4 or 5 weeks ago. Let's have a listen to what he had to say, Chris.
Probably I'm the best.
Sure.
And we had a great camp and we had a great fight the last fight that we was together. And
Liam.
Yeah, Liam against Liam. And everything went smooth. During camp, outside the gym, inside the gym, everything went smooth.
Does that mean you're now with him for long term?
I'm sure I am.
Yeah.
I'm sure I am. We've got a really, really great relationship. Mm-hmm. Not just only with me. We got the other 2 trainers. You got Red Spikes, you got Saul Dieguez. You know, they play a big part into training him too.
Tactically, would you have changed what he done in the first fight? The way that he fought?
Yeah, I would have.
Yeah.
I would have.
You would have approached it different?
I would have approached it a little bit different. But, you know, just...
In what way?
I can't tell you that.
Because he's going to do it this time around?
We might.
You listened to that, Paul. I think we were all together when he was in the studio. Yeah. What do you make of his comments, Brian, about Chris Eubank and the potential future and the direction of travel and the opportunities that he has or doesn't have?
He's obviously very confident in himself, and as the results will speak for that, obviously, with what he's done with Terence Crawford. But, you know, obviously that's Terence Crawford, and when he's working with other fighters, we'll see. But to be fair to him, he had a successful night when he boxed me brother Liam in the rematch, and he was in the corner then. So they'll be trying to rekindle what they had there, and whether they're working on specific things in camp or not. But as I said to you, I'm not just saying it because Chris is here. I've seen Chris in the gym, and I know what he does, and I'm not sure who he will listen to and who he will pay attention to. And
were you impressed with the changes that were made? I mean, he made you over there, Mr. Eubank, made disparaging observations about Liam that he wasn't at a certain level. Were you impressed with the performance that Chris, the adjustments that he made in the second fight against your brother, or was it, in your view, solely down to the injury that Liam brought into that fight?
Yeah, the latter. I think obviously down to the injury. Liam shouldn't have been in there. As Chris has been saying about how promoters are, how people are, how the game is, how the fight game is, it's one of them cases where you have to fight, otherwise it's going to cost you majorly financially. And it's one of them things, we've spoke about it in the past, but no excuses. What happened on the night was Chris Eubank beat Liam Smith, and just like Liam beat Eubank in the first one, and that's it. We can't really make excuses or go on about it. You've got to take it on the chin. But the performance-wise, he was obviously better because he was not as good in the first fight as he was in the second fight. So there had to have been some improvements. There was a change of team. I think it was Jonathan Banks in the first one, then it was obviously Beaumac. So Beaumac will be using that as momentum to try and say, right, well, here's what we did last time. Let's get in the gym and hit the ground running. I think they've been training abroad and in Dubai and maybe here as well. So I'm looking forward to seeing what type of...
Do you like... I'm not going to ask you about Beaumac's acumen, Chris, because I know you don't want to get into that territory. But do you like Beaumac? And given the fact he said that he's likely to be long-term with your son, do you like that for your son?
I'm in a position of love. I look at everything positively because everything is going to work out for my own good because God is in charge and all is well and all is well indeed.
So not an answer then. Do you think he can be a world champion at 160, which is what Beaumac... Do you think your son can be a world champion?
Who knows?
You do. You've got a view. Okay, no. Have you got a view?
Do I have a view?
He's 36 now.
Yes, I do have a view.
Do you still think you can be world champion?
I do have a view.
And go on, tell me your view then.
I don't know.
You don't know?
I really don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, I really don't know.
If he were, do you think he can be, followed on with what Beaumac has said, that he thinks that your son can win a world title at 160?
Yeah, right.
We know who exists in 168, which is perhaps the weight class that you think Chris should be in. And ultimately, that's Crawford and it's Canelo Alvarez and all that sort of crowd. And I don't know what you think of that. But at 160, it's not quite the same level of fighters, albeit I think Carlos Adames is a lot better than people give him credit for, right?
Well, Carlos Adames is good, but you've got Eslandi Lara as well. He's 41 years of age. You know, he's the WBA champion. You look at that and you go, that's a winnable fight for Chris. And I think that Carlos Adames... I think that's if Chris gets it right, I think that there's winnable fights out there for him. You'd want to stay away from Janabak, the IBF champ. He's the younger guy coming through that is a decent champion. But there's opportunity there for sure. And I think that we will see exactly what Chris has got left at 160, you know, going into this fight. Because as soon as that first bell rings, it's either going to be, if Chris Eubank Jr. gets it right on the weight, and that hasn't had an effect on him at this later stage in that last fight, because that was a grueling fight. You know, and that can have a lasting effect on you. And if it hasn't, then, you know, he comes through this fight and he's got opportunity there for sure.
Can I ask you a more all-encompassing question, Chris, to close off this section? Has your son fulfilled the potential that you might have thought he had? Has he reached the levels and opportunities, not economically, because we know he will have done out of these fights with Conor Benn? Has he become the fighter and had the achievements that you thought he might have had?
He achieved that at his last fight.
With Conor?
Yeah, he achieved it. I mean, no world title attached, I know. But the amount of people who had an interest in this fight around the globe, he did the impossible. He really did do the impossible. And so, you know, if I say...
Sorry, Chris, what do you mean by the impossible?
You know, to be the 28-year-old Ben.
Pumped up welterweight.
Pumped up welterweight. So now you're taking the view that I've been trying to get across that the weights are wrong?
No, just asking you. You said that he achieved the impossible. That's all I'm asking.
I think it's the character he showed, though, Simon, in there as well. You look at that, and
is that the point you're making?
Look at those later rounds, you go, that's gladiatorial, and you go, that's what it is. It's prize fighting, whether there's a world title on the line or not. You just look at what they've both done there.
The point I'm making is, you're coming to a career, and look, so many people are not following the rules, and then you want me to speak by the rules. The rules being you're supposed to achieve world championship status.
Yeah.
But you're not paying attention to the rules when it comes to the weights. So what I'm saying to you is, in this world of instant gratification and it's all about money, he has done the impossible. He labeled the promoters as being low vibrational people, one.
Wasn't quite the terminology, was it? But go on.
Two, what he did, he was in a fight that enthralled the globe, the world, okay? Irrespective of the fact that there wasn't a world championship attached to it, he won the hearts of the people with the one fight.
So the answer is yes, he's fulfilled the ambitions or the direction of opportunity you thought he might have gotten.
Yes, even though that will be challenged for many years to come. If the fight, if he was to have retired,
it only matters what you think, because the question was of you. The question was of you. It only matters it can't be challenged by anybody. The only person that can speak to what you thought your son was going to achieve and what you value it as is you, and no one can challenge that, because it's your fault. It's unique to you, and the only value in it is what you have to say, not me, not any other observer. Your judgment of what your son has achieved is valuable to one person and one person only, you and perhaps your son. The rest of us can go to hell in a handcart.
Hold on. Why are you telling me something that is obvious?
I'm just stating it for the audience because they might not be so obvious.
Everybody, you're confusing them because you're bringing up, you're saying something like they don't know. What he did, it finalized his position as a fighter. He will always be remembered as a great. If he goes back into the ring, okay, then you're standing up again at the...
When he does, not if, when he's going back into the ring.
I say if, because you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow.
Okay, well, we'll see. Look,
No, again, you don't know. Look, you don't know what's going to happen
this
tomorrow.
Is semantics,
it looks like the fight's going to happen.
Yep.
Okay, and I'm saying to you, if it does, he would have actually, in my view, he would have thrown away the position that I have, which is the hearts of the people.
Right.
Because you don't get a second chance to make a first impression.
True.
That impression that he made, there's nowhere he can't go. There's nothing he can't do now. He has credibility.
Yep.
Credibility is what you're after, because with credibility, you can do what I am. You can get where I am, which is to have everything.
Okay, fantastic. Let's turn our attention to Conor, and let's hear from Chris's old mate, Nigel, speaking earlier on the show to us.
How is Conor, and how has his camp been, Nigel, for this one?
Oh my gosh, I think you know what it is. After we all know what he went through, and the depression, the nervous breakdown, the thing that he was actually going through. To watch him now, in this, it's so funny that him losing that fight. I think it was a blessing, the first fight, because I think he would have gone and blown literally everything, that he's earned, all the millions, would have just got. He's had time to sit back, look at his life, think about what happened, and now he's just he's at another level. The training has gone so well. I won't say well, it's gone great. He's actually just at peace in himself, and in loving, even like yesterday when they had a face-off, he was just so relaxed with Chris Jr. No problem at all.
So in that first fight, from your point of view, what went wrong for Conor?
The first fight, you got to understand what he went through that led up to all of this. Being called a drug cheat, being called this, being called that, and then suffering with depression and everything. So he's not in the right frame of mind. Been out of the ring for 14, 15 months, never made no money. So he had so much pressure on him. And now he's a completely different man. And now he can go and look back, watch the fight, where he went wrong. But most importantly, what I love about him, he's just relaxed in himself and in that the love that he's actually showing Chris. Even though with the smash he's facing, it's just like he's completely different. And I love the position that he's in, watching him train, watching him spar.
Listening to that, Paul, what do you make of what Nigel was saying?
I think a lot of the stuff Nigel was saying in the build-up, he's obviously he's trying to smooth things over for his son and make his son obviously sound better, which is what a dad does, as Chris has been saying early on, and the same as Chris would do for his son, and the same as I would do for mine and anyone else's. You want to try and take some of the negative attention away from them and try and take that on your shoulders and try and be a bit positive towards his son. But I think he knows his son's up against it. I think he knew in the first fight his son was up against it. And I think my opinion going into the previous fight was there was a few levels between both fighters, not just in size, not just in weight, but in ability. And I think the first fight has proven to me that maybe with a bit of age, maybe with a few hard fights that Chris has had, that it's actually closer than we think. And I think they have a right to be confident. I think Nigel and the team probably do have a right to be confident in this. And if he's worked really hard and he knows, because he knows now what to expect. It was a bit of unknown last time for Conor also. There was question marks about Conor's chin. Could he take what Chris had? Because Chris is a big puncher at middleweight. And I think he ticked a few of those boxes himself in the night, whereas this fight he'll go in a lot more confident.
Let's hear from Conor himself talking on talkSPORT yesterday.
Do you feel as though this is last chance saloon for you, and not just for you, but for the Benn name, of course?
Do you know what? Listen, Eubank is a great fighter. I take my hat off to him. He has my respect. He had more courage, heart, desire and will to win than I thought he'd have. I thought it was curtains after the third round when I hit him with a left hook. And I genuinely thought it was going to be an early night. But he had a lot more heart than I thought. But do I chase this as redemption? Of course I do. Do I want revenge? Yes, of course I do. But ultimately, this is a fantasy fight for the British public that I'm glad I could deliver to everybody. You know, and that was me jumping up 2 weight divisions to give everybody this fight. This wasn't on my radar. This wasn't a fight that was supposed to happen. We made it happen. And it's turned out to be one hell of a fight. But as I said, I'm excited to drop back down to 147.
Conor, you said it there about the heart that both you men showed in the ring. I mean, Andy's right, it was an absolute classic, right? Do you feel like you brought out the best in both of you? Because both of the fighters, you had to go to the very end, even when you were probably tired as anything, keep throwing punches. Do you think it broke? You saw the best of Chris and he saw the best of you?
He saw the best of me in terms of my spirit and my will to win and my resilience and my strength, but he didn't see the best boxing side to me, which I plan on putting on a beautiful boxing performance come Saturday. But it takes two to tango, and nobody else could have brought that out of me. It was, we went to hell and back to give the public the fight that they deserve. You want people to remember this fight 10, 15, 20 years and go, God, do you remember that fight? You know, do you remember how it made them feel? The families all getting round together, watching it with their kids, and their kids grow up. That's what sport is about. It's about bringing everybody together, and I'm glad I could entertain the nation with that performance.
He says he's going to put on a beautiful boxing performance on Saturday. Does he have that in his locker, Spence?
I don't think that happens, mate. I think that, his game is to try and be rough and try and take Chris into the trenches. And I think that that's where he'll feel that he's got the success. Chris Eubank is too big, too long, too good a boxer, and I think we saw that in the early rounds of the last contest. I think Conor's game is to try and take him into that dogfight and hope that Chris gets old overnight. I think that that's what they're hinging on. Look, this family feud has gone back a long, long way with the fathers and now the sons, and you go, look at the score. It's 2-0 with one draw to the Eubanks. I think the Benn name won that victory, and that's how desperate they are to get that victory.
I am a bit of a boxing geek, obviously. I watched every one of the fights that they all had when they were younger. Did you notice the short colour on both fighters?
Absolutely.
The first one. I'm wondering whether this will be the same for the second one for the rematch.
Of course, mate.
Pay a little bit of homage to the fathers on this one.
This is bigger than just a fight, there's more to it than that. Yeah, boxing is obviously the umbrella, but, the families have history as well, and it means something to get that victory. So that's why we saw the fight that we saw last time, because both guys are upholding the names of the Benn and the Eubanks.
What did you learn, Chris, about Conor Benn? You talked about him being a superior fighter than other people perhaps have given him credit for. Was there anything else that you learned about Conor in that fight?
Yes, but I'm not sharing that.
Okay, that's helpful. What happens? No, I'll come back to that question in a second. How do you think Conor goes about winning this fight, Spence, if he is to win it?
I think he's got to start fast. He's got to try and close the gap. He's got to work the body early of Chris Eubank and hope to slow him down in those later rounds. You know, Eubank is now 36 years of age. He's had the longer career. And he's got to hope that, like I say, every fighter gets old overnight. And he's got to hope that, you know, there's a certain aspect of that plays its part. Conor is the younger guy coming through. You know, he's young, he's tenacious, he's very fiery and he wants that victory. And so, yeah, that's... It's quite plain and simple, really. He can't outbox Chris. Chris, you know, has the better jab. He's better at range. I think for Conor, it's got to be educated pressure.
It was asked of Nigel earlier on, Chris, what happens to both fighters in the event of an outcome that potentially gives Conor Benn a win. Is there a trilogy? I mean, I know you've just made the point, and you've made it very succinctly about the fact that you felt that Chris had made his point. He laid everything down that he needed to make. He'd created the first impression that the world had now seen him on a stage with a huge audience, and he'd done everything he needed to do. So I suppose that means you didn't want to see him in the second fight. If he were to lose the second fight, hypothesise for a second, Nigel ruled out any indication of a trilogy. Could you see a trilogy happening in this circumstance? Or are you going to do that?
It's gone. It's now in the realm of nonsense to me.
Yeah.
So there's nothing I can see that.
But you'll still be there, mate. You'll still be there.
I'm always going to be supporting my son.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can't be that much nonsense in there, can it?
Look, this, you know, the number one thing you want in a man is loyalty. Okay, to my son.
Yeah.
You know, I've done things. I explained a little story to you about Al Heyman. Okay, I'm loyal.
Yeah.
I am loyal.
It's a noble quality.
And he's my son.
Yeah. But do you think? I mean, can you see in your mind's eye, besides the nonsense of it and the lack of value you think it has, besides the economic returns, if he were to lose this fight? I know you don't want to ruminate on that because it won't be your default setting. Can you see the commercialisation of a third fight? Do you, in your mind's eye, knowing all the animals that are part of this and how it all plays out,
yes,
do you think there would be a trilogy?
That's the trap. Money is the trap. Keep
Always.
on coming. Keep on coming.
Always.
And you know, and
one we've all fallen into.
There are those who are saying, "Please take the money, get back in there, so we can strip you of your health."
Yeah.
This is what's going on in the real world, in the realness of it. But the authorities, they are.
But everyone has agency. Everyone has agency.
Meaning?
Meaning they have control of their own destiny.
Yeah, look.
Chris is a big boy. If he makes £10 million a fight, he doesn't need to do a third one, does he?
Yeah, but the rules are protecting. The rules are there to protect him from himself.
Okay.
Because otherwise, you'll just keep on. You know, if someone keeps on offering you 10 million, 20 million for a fight, you're going to say, look, I'm going to go back in if you're still in the money trap.
Yeah, granted. But if you're a grown-up and an adult and you look at your health, and this is, I'm going to take you to the subject I know you want to talk about. If you're a grown-up and adult, you make decisions about health rather than wealth if you've made a certain amount of money. I've done it in my life. I've made choices that have been based upon not doing something because economically it's going to benefit me, but not necessarily physically and mentally. You've talked a lot in this discussion about the rules and about the disciplines that the industry should overlay on fighters. You believe emphatically, I think I'm right, and correct me if I'm saying things that are incorrect about your observations, that weight classes are there to be observed, not moved from, and that fighters shouldn't be able to move between weight classes.
That's right.
Even though yourself you did.
Because I was allowed to. I shouldn't have been allowed to go up to 183. I shouldn't have been allowed to. But if you leave it to me, I'll beat anybody. I'll fight him. There's a world championship on the line. Or Carl Thompson, I think I can take him. The authorities are there. They are there to protect me from myself. I'm a warrior. I'm never gonna back out of a fight. You put that on the table. Let me tell you what. The promoter. I wasn't fighting Carl Thompson that particular night. It was the promoter I was fighting. Like Junior now. He's not fighting Conor Benn. He's fighting the promoter. And it looks like he's winning. In the end, I will win.
Do you agree with Chris's argument about the obligation upon governance to take away the choice of fighters who are the most noblest of animals in the first instance, that will put themselves in the way of jeopardy because they believe in themselves and believe that they can confront any obstacle? Do you believe that weight classes should be sacrosanct, that there should be a weight class?
Absolutely.
I'm asking the two boys here as well, alongside you. I know your view.
Yeah.
Do you believe, as ex-fighters, that's entirely the case? When we've seen fighters like Pacquiao that have gone from weight class to weight class to weight class to weight class and kept on being massively successful.
Historically, fighters have done that. Roy Jones Jr. done it from middleweight up to heavyweight, come back down, but was never the same fighter again. Pacquiao went from flyweight up to middleweight. You know, you look at Oscar De La Hoya was a six-weight world champion. So historically, fighters have done that. They've gone through the weights.
But Chris's argument will be you don't know the damage.
No, but Chris's argument...
You don't know the damage, his argument is.
Yeah,
you don't know what it does to them after they come out of the boxing ring.
100%.
It's not only that. My argument is it's against the rules. The rules say no. You can't do that. You can't jump up. Do you remember the time? The Fantastic Four. You didn't see...
I was just going to mention them now. My favourite fighter is Ray Leonard. He's jumped through the divisions. So did Hearn, so did Hagler, so did Girard.
Okay, in the beginning of the 80s, you couldn't... You weren't allowed to jump up.
Same day weigh-in as well, wasn't it, in the 80s?
Yeah, you weren't allowed to. So
the rules have changed?
They're being flouted for money. They're being flouted in order to actually... I understand it's entertainment and these guys can make money out of it, but it's not healthy for the fighters. It is damaging. It's killing them. Michael Watson is real.
Is it real at certain weight classes, Chris? Because I'm trying to look at the enforceability of what you're saying. Because the morality of what you're saying and the empirical evidence that will to tell how fighters go up weight classes and what the damage is done post their fighting career. Yeah. But there's also the anatomical structures that change inside a boy turning into a man. And how does one legislate for, if you say you're in that weight class, you stay there forever because we remove the opportunity to go through weight classes and stop you from hurting yourself. But as you become a bigger man, you're 18 years of age, you fight in a lighter weight division. Yeah. And by the time you're 22, 23, you're a bigger man, you've grown into yourself. Then how do you do it? As
you at middleweight, didn't it?
So long as you, look, if you are at 154, you get a bit bigger, so then you go to 168. Then you're fighting someone at 168. You're not fighting. It's not 147 fighting 168 or 160. But that disparity is. It's going to damage the fighters.
I think the argument, Chris, as well, is that when a fighter has been at a certain weight, let's say 160, and Chris has been there at 160 now for a long time, and as they get older, and you know better than anyone, that making that weight becomes a lot harder. That's where the damage is done, when fighters then drain themselves down to the weight because they lose the fluid in and around the brain. The brain knocks against the head, and it's not now, it's in 10 years' time that the guy doesn't know, he's got a load of money in the bank, but he doesn't know where the bank is. Or you see him talking to lampposts, because that is the reality of draining and making weight. That's where the damage is done. Not so much going through the weights. I think it's more keeping down at the weight.
Is that why you moved up to super middleweight, Chris? So 168 from middleweight, obviously you're world champion. Was it opportunity and because it would have done you a bit of good moving up because you were obviously tight at the weight?
Yeah, I couldn't make the weight anymore. Yeah. I couldn't make middleweight anymore. Right, so rather than go through that, we have to concentrate on the rules. If the rules are not adhered to, fighters get damaged.
Reinforce them.
And what these guys are doing now, they have this Tank Davis fighting someone.
Paul.
What's the weight?
But that's laughable, though, isn't it?
It's laughable, but it's real. It's happening.
Yeah.
So it's now expanding more.
135 pounds versus 200 pounder.
Okay,
that's ridiculous. But he's not even a fighter, though, is he? I mean, let's be honest about it. He's on YouTube.
I'm not going to get into that. Okay, as far as I'm concerned,
you get in a ring, you're a fighter.
No, if you have a license, I'm not going to say you're a YouTube fighter. That's not fair to him.
Fair enough.
He's only doing what the rules are allowing him to do.
You want the rules changed.
Okay, so changed. I don't want the rules changed. I want them enforced.
Got it.
We have to enforce them, and if we don't, then
there'll be challenges.
Let me tell you, our society on the whole, no rules. Oh, I can do this.
I agree.
Hold on.
I agree.
This guy, he wants to actually identify as a cup. Yeah. I've got to deal with him as a cup now. I've got to call him a cup. You can't drink out of me, though. Look, the point I'm making to you is that if there are not rules, these rules, that are statutes that have been in place
Apply
for
them.
all of these
Apply them.
decades and centuries, if they're not applied, then you're making Great Britain into idiots. We are not idiots.
But it's not just unique to here, though, is it? Just before we finish the show, I wanted to get a state of the nations from you, Chris, about the state of boxing. We've seen the introduction of Turki Al-Sheikh. Your son did a cursory glance towards him because he knows that's an opportunity and was the first person in the show to turn around and say every other promoter was a rat bag besides Turki Al-Sheikh. You've seen Dana White come into the sport and what he's bringing to it. When you look at the state of the nation, in terms of boxing as a whole, besides this application of rules or lack of application of rules around weight classes, are you optimistic about the future of boxing, given the fact it's so prevalent right now? There's so much noise about it. It's becoming a major sport again in so many different people's eyes. Do you think it's in a healthy state, or are you worried about it?
Yeah, of course. Worried is the wrong word. There has to be a reset, and the reset has to go back to normal. And normal is rectitude. Everything has to be correct in terms of weights. This language that all these fighters are using, destroying their own careers, not knowing that, their grandchildren are going to be looking at this language that they're using. They are, where are the standard bearers? And we are supposed to be, the fighters are the guys who, the guys who are in prison, they look at us and they respect us. The politicians, they look at us and they respect us. Everyone between the two respect and love because we are the standard bearers. But they're making us into chaff.
That's society, though, isn't it?
But we have. So we have to make a stand. We have to stand for what is correct, for what is decent. Queen Elizabeth II, 70 years on the throne, impeccable behaviour. We are Great Britain. Hold on. Don't say anything at this point because this is a very important point to get across. Where are our standards?
Agreed. I agree with you 100%.
Okay, thank you.
I agree with you 100%. But going back to the question before we close the show, given the introduction of the Saudis, given the fact that we put aside the weight class argument, given that we're seeing more of the best fights being made and the best fighters fighting the best fights, and there's not this avoidance of it all, are you happy with boxing as a sport that's now seeming to reignite itself in the public conscience and public psyche again?
I'm going to be happier when we act like Great Britons. We make the rules. We set the standards. Great Britain, we set the standards.
We also have to know what our own values are before we start doing that.
I know what my value is.
I don't mean you. I don't mean you.
No, it is me. It is me. It is us. Okay, it's the person who is speaking for what is correct, for what is upright. We have always been about doing the right and not the wrong. This is why Great Britain is special.
I don't know, some people would say colonialism had its challenges.
Oh, no, absolutely, I understand that. This is a new day. And I say it's a new day because
Fair enough.
because I am here.
Indeed.
Okay, and I'm speaking this trumpet, this noise, I'm making this sound because the sound is right, it's correct, it's decent. That's who we are.
I agree with a lot of things you say.
Thank you. Okay.
For the record.
All right.
Fellas, that's it for episode 146. Always a journey when Chris Eubank's in the building. Thank you, Spencer. Thank you, Paul. Chris, nice to see you. Hope to see you in the future. And you guys, we'll see you soon. Today's show is brought to you in partnership with talkSPORT Bet. We're offering a whopping 30-1 on Chris Eubank Jr. and 40-1 on Conor Benn for first-time customers. Head to talksportbet.com for more information or hit the link in the description.